say thank you for coming out here for the interview. There are going to be a few questions here about how Arrested Development as an organization works, like the role of Baba and whatnot. So we'll be asking about things like that nature.
じゃあもう一度確認したいんですけれども、スピリチュアルアドバイザーというババの存在っていうのは、バンドにとって具体的にどういうものなんでしょうか。
Probably you've had to explain this a couple of times before, but what exactly is the role of the spiritual advisor?
Well, let me say that Arrested Development is in a constant, we're constantly evolving to, we have a concept of what we are in theory, and we're all in what we practice. And we're always trying to evolve to our practice being what our theory is. So let me start with the theory. The theory of Baba OJ in our group is one of a spiritual advisor. And what that is that he's an elder that gives us wisdom and knowledge that we can learn from his generation of life, so that we don't have to repeat things over and over again. Is that?
Yeah, that's a good start. But I mean,
right.
For example, what kind of things would you have to repeat over without benefit of his wisdom?
Well, I think that one thing that we people in the world, when we learn about history, the purpose of learning history is to try not to repeat the bad things that happen, to try to learn from the good things that have happened and to enhance upon them and not to repeat what's going on. So Baba OJ is, number one, visually he's a symbolism. He's a symbolism of that wisdom of the ages. He's a symbolism of the things that the elders have learned and lived through, that we've yet to learn and live through, that they can hopefully pass down to us so we don't have to go through as much turmoil as they had to in order to learn it. So visually he's that symbolism, and spiritually he advises us and keeps our heads grounded. Being as old as he is and being an elder, he's not as tempted as we are by some of the things that youth can be tempted by being in this industry. You know, like money and fame and egos and things of that nature. So he helps us with those things. And that's Baba OJ.
そのまあ聞くということ、僕がユニバーシティにこれした時にちょうどメンバーがなんか失いたいからってババがこうやったら治るよって教えて書いてで、そういうことがあると普段の生活でババが何かを教えるっていったことがどのような形で書くのかって書いてあるババの知り合いみたいなそういうことが行われている例えばなんかレクチャーを時間でやるのかとか。
See, when he saw you guys at Connecticut University, and when he talked to you then, it was like a band member having back problems or back pains or something. And Baba said, okay, we're going to do this so it gets better. I want to know, how does Baba actually pass on his wisdom to each member? Like, how does he deal with each of you guys? In what way how does he pass it on to you? Does he sit you down and have talks with you? How does it work? The nuts and bolts of the relationship.
I think it works a lot of different ways. Sometimes he may sit down and talk with us and give us advice on a one-on-one basis. Other times he may talk to all of us at one time, but most of the time Baba OJ teaches by example, and the way he lives and what he does is how he'll teach. So he uses less words most of the time than he does practicing. So when we might see him meditating, or we may see him the way that he eats, those are the things that I think that he wants us to pick up from him. I think that's his overall plan. I think that he feels that words are useless in many ways. He feels that words are so pretty and so fit to be spoken to people that he feels that many times people just ignore words and they more so go by what they see a person doing than what they'll see them speak. So he tries to do things that he would like us to emulate.
Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
そもそもどのような感じで出会われたんですかね。
How exactly did you meet up with him?
I met Bob OJ at a college, and I was going to that college, and he just used to be there a lot. And a lot of students that were my age were talking about Bob OJ all the time, and they were saying that there was this older man who was giving them a lot of knowledge and helping them with certain situations in their personal lives, and I wanted to meet him. And so I got in touch with him from a friend of mine, and we talked on the phone, and I asked him to be in our group, and he said no. And then he found out later that he knew my parents, and he then called me back and said yes, he would be in it. Number one, because he didn't want my parents to be upset at him. Number two, because he didn't feel that the group would last long, with an old person in it. So he didn't feel he'd really be obligated for any long period of time. And so he joined, and he's been with us ever since.
What was he doing at the college there? Was he an instructor, or was he an auditor, or what?
Actually, he just, Baba is somewhat of a vagabond in the sense that he just goes places and sort of lives.
Sets up shop.
Yeah, he sets up shop and he lives there. He's anywhere. It doesn't matter. He doesn't really have a home per se. And so, he was just there. He stayed. He was there all the time, and people just knew of him. So he would come there every day and sort of talk to people.
今聞いてみたんだけど、あの人は流れ物とか結構点々とあちこちに住み着いて、
彼の両親を知ってたんですか。彼の
レースがたまたま知り合いだったっていうことは後になって分かった。
そもそも自分がバンドをやっていて彼を入れようと思ったんですか。
そうです。バンドに入れようと笑われた。
じゃあなんで入れようとして彼の何を見たんでなんで入れようと。
You might have to overlap what we were just talking about, but when you wanted to invite him into the band, what exactly about him made you want to invite him in? What's the wisdom thing?
I think that for me, I had always imagined having a band with an elder in it. There was a number of reasons. Number one was for the symbolism of it. I felt that there was this imaginary generation gap that had been perpetuated through media so strongly in America that I didn't feel in the black community really existed as strongly. It does exist, but not as strongly. And so I wanted to have a group where this elder was represented as relating to the youth, because in the community that does happen more so than it gets credit for. And so in our group we wanted to show that the elders have a lot of wisdom, the youth have a lot of energy, and together you have progress. So we, as a political group, that's the political statement of Baba OJ.
So within the structure of this band, his role is essential then. In like making a band that is like a sort of a mini community, his role is essential in that. Definitely. Kind of the glue that holds it together. Definitely.
その時にさんの方は今のみたいな母体のような考え方をしてたんですけど、ババに会ったから変わったというのではなくて。
Did Baba fit in with the vision you had of the band, or did your vision of the band change when you learned of him, when you met him?
He actually was part of the vision before I met him, It turned out he knew me before I knew him. He was at my parents' wedding. So he knew me much before I knew him. He knew me when I was first born. I didn't know him until I was already in college.
But before you met up with him, before you learned about him, did you have the idea of like putting an elder in the band?
I had the idea, but it never really. I think it was divinely given to us, the fact that that happened, that an elder being in our band manifested. I think it was a divine intervention, because although it was an idea, I never would have thought it would happen.
僕なんかの不思議に思うのは、多分まあずっとあなたたちが同世代ぐらいだと思うんですけど、まあ、僕らの世代っていうのは本当に自分たちがすごく行動したりとか意識を高めようみたいな考え方ってなかなか行きにくくて、多分世界史的に見ても僕らはそういうこと考えない最もそういうことを考えない世代だと思うので、あなたがそういうふうな考え方をまあ前からしてたわけなんですけど、それに至ったきっかけっていうのは何かあるんですか？
One thing about you, you personally speak, that strikes me as unusual is that, in spite of the fact that you're about the same age, you belong to yourself, belong to the same generation. He says that it's a generation that's characterized by a kind of a blasé attitude. People just can't get worked up or excited about it. Whereas you're a very positive, motivated person. Is that something you were born with, or is that something that came about through certain experiences?
No, it definitely came about through certain experiences. You know, throughout my life, there were certain groups that influenced me. Public Enemy was one of them. There was a number of books that influenced me. The autobiography of Malcolm X. A number of speakers like Farrakhan. You know. As I continued to grow in my life, different people came into the paths of my life to inspire me to ultimately make up who I am, and that continues. I'm not finished with that. So I think that as far as the perception that this generation is very sort of nonchalant about everything, I think more than that being the case, I think the media, for reasons of advertising, and I think the media has more so painted that picture than that being the actual case. You know, I think that, and if anything, it might be a self-fulfilling prophecy that it's been thrown in our face so much as a generation that we're supposed to be just nonchalant and not care about anything, that I think many people in my generation are starting to try to live like that because they feel that's how they're supposed to live. I actually think that a lot of our generation is thinking, and right now I think the role of the elders is lacking. I think the elders aren't presenting any type of outlets for the youth that are thinking. They're not presenting those outlets to communicate with them, and also to channel those energies, those political and those thoughtful and philosophical energies into the right directions. I think the elders aren't playing that role that they need to.
How could they be better playing that role? What sort of avenues of communication and expression could they provide?
I think number one, I think the elders need to give guidance. I think they need to show direction. And at this point, I think that because of a capitalistic society that we live in, our elders are now in business, and they're allowing their business to give direction to the youth. And unfortunately, business isn't out to do that. Business is out to make a profit. And so what's happening is you're leaving the youth with all types of messages coming from all different types of means, none of which are for the betterment of the society. I shouldn't say none, but most of which are not for the betterment of society. Instead, it's for the profit of all these different, you know, companies and stuff. I think the parents need to play more of a role of the guidance. And nowadays we have a society where parents are saying that, you know, the children need to grow up on their own and they need to have their own identity. Of course they need to have their own identity. But part of the whole chain of human development is that when your parents grow old and learn so much stuff, they're supposed to pass a lot of that knowledge down to you so you don't have to repeat it, and so that you can grow and progress. And I think that there's a lack in elder leadership. It's just my opinion. It's one man's opinion.
ちょっと返していただけますか。まあ、両親とか、
もともと質問なんだけど、まとめるにはそうですね。
僕らで
はい。それはね、多分マスコミが、作り上げたイメージであって、そういうイメージを押し付けられた若者は思わずその方向に行ってしまっているという部分もあると思う。ところが実情はそうではないと。みんなそれなりの守れるものがあるはずで、ただそれをどのように表現していくかというような指導は、上の世代、職工たちがなかなか教えてくれない。
その辺を多くなってる。例えばそのバームメンについてデベロップメントみたいな、いわゆる成長を阻んでいる、その阻んでいるというふうな、阻んでいる主体、例えばそれはメディアだったりなんだったりっていう、メディアだったりということが仮にあるけど、他に何かあるんですけど、
まあ上の世代の人です。
いやいや、その前で言うと、成長を阻んでいるものが、例えばメディア的な、他に何かあるとすれば何かある。
So the name Arrested Development obviously has various meanings, but in the sense we're talking about here, Arrested Development being arrested by somebody, and you're laying the blame at the feet of mass media. Who else should take the blame for that?
I don't think I'm really laying it at the blame of mass media. I think I'm more so saying that people right now in a state of arrested development, we as a group, we use the name as a reminder of what we need to move beyond. I really I'm not laying the blame on any one entity. I think it's a number of different people. But when you ask the question of who do I think, what do I think is I forget the question actually, but I was just answering that question. But that's all I was, it's just the answer to the question.
Yeah, the question was about whether you had certain experiences that made you what you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
それぞれ考え方がありますけど、あなたは要するに上の世代、東の世代で、それを自分なりに紹介していくことが考え方の中に一つあると思うんですけれども、その中で衝突との世代ギャップみたいないろいろあると思うんですけれども、そういうことはなかったですか？衝突になる。
You have a very positive attitude towards learning from your elders, but has there ever been any cases in which you sort of had a clash with older people and their ideas?
Yes, there's been definitely cases of that. I think, it's obvious that you won't, as an individual, you will have different thoughts and things that you've lived that make you a little different than anybody. But I think that, to answer your question, there is times. There's definitely times when I don't agree with the elders or with my elders, with my parents for that matter.
What kind of things would that, why would those differences in opinion exist?
I think it's because I've lived a different life than them. And so there's certain things that I believe that they may not believe. But one thing that I do have is respect for them. I think that's one thing that might lack too in many of our people, and many of the people, is that I still have a respect for what they say. And I will sit down and I'll listen. And not only will I listen, while I'm listening, I'll understand that they've been through a lot more than I have. And I think sometimes my generation, including myself, don't give them enough credit to say that they've been through a lot more than we've been through. Despite the differences of our lives, we've still been through a lot. And so sometimes some of the words that they give and the advice they give could possibly have some wisdoms that we're not hip to yet. So I do listen, and I respect it, and I may disagree. And I think my parents, for instance, respect my opinion too when I disagree. Mm-hmm.
それでですね、ただし、いろんなことを吸収する中においても、我々世代であるからこその新しい考え方みたいなものは、当然あると思うんですけども、いろんな、お子さんや小老会の方を見てきて、僕だったらこうしたのになるのに、例えば、これでなんか自分のになるんですけども、そんなに新しい考え方みたいなものはあるとすると思います。
This gets a little bit abstract here, but new generations of people often bring with them new ideas.
Yes.
Okay. So, from your perspective, maybe you could look back over history and say, well, this is the way the older generation did it. This is the way the elders did it, but this is not the way I would have done it. Or I would have liked to have seen it done differently. I'm sure you have that kind of outlook as well.
Yeah, definitely.
そこで質問は、Like, for example, in your case, does anything come to mind how you would have done things differently? That would be, I guess, the wisdom you would pass on to your elders.
Right. Differently than who?
Than the people who actually lived it.
Okay.
Like I said, it was getting a little bit abstract here.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure there is. I mean, there's so many things that I probably would do differently, but that's in hindsight, and so I have a 2020 vision looking back at what they did, and that's the beauty of me looking back on what they did. I think that our whole message in Arrested Development, we many times talk about going back, knowing your roots, knowing your history, knowing your tradition, and the reason for that is not to go backwards and to live in that tradition, but the reason why we talk about going back is that when you go back, you're able to check it out, see what it was about, and you're able to progress on that and make some new things. Like you were saying, my generation will definitely have some new ideas, and then also keep some of the good things, as opposed to just coming up with new ideas that may not be necessarily new. They may be old, tried, and dumb, and ridiculous. But so we may have to sort of check it out and see what we got here. You know, that's our whole concept on history.
で話は変わりますけども、まあ、今のアメリカのティーンエイジャーの抱える問題の一つとして、それがまあ、いわゆる日本家庭、いわゆる崩壊家庭に育つというプランは、まあ、今のティーンエイジャーが持っているプランは、大きな問題です。例えば、そういうものの代弁者ですね、ハードコバーンみたいなのがいて、彼はそれを大きくなったということなんですけど、あなたはそこの中で、彼女の話をしたり、もう一方で僕らを引っ張ってくれるリーダーがいるんだというふうに言ったんですけど、もし仮にあなたがリーダーになる人になれば、そういった設計したカードバンドの設計みたいなものをかかってくるんですけども、その次はどう対処していくかという流れです。
One of the largest problems facing people of your generation is being brought up in broken homes, or being brought up by a single parent. And you talk a lot about the importance of family ties in your music.
Yeah.
You sense the problem. On the other hand, you get generational leaders like a Kurt Cobain, who was brought up in that sort of a situation, and became kind of a spokesman for kids who had gone through the same type of emotional hardship. And it seems like the pressure of being a spokesman or a leader of a generation forced him to sort of cave in emotionally towards me. Although there are probably a number of matters involved. In your own case, do you think you're a spokesman or a leader for your generation? And if so, would you face the same sort of pressure putting yourself in that kind of a position? Long question.
No, I mean, I don't feel that I'm a leader for my generation. I think that I'm one guy, you know, with an opinion, and we're one group with opinions, and you know, I think I would never, first of all, kill myself. I would never do something like that, and I don't know what's the answer on that one. I'm not sure if I got the full question.
I think there were a lot of assumptions in the question that they didn't quite think through.
Right.
まあ、その中でリーダーが必要だみたいなことを言ったら、そのリーダーっていうのは具体的にどういうの？
But you do talk about the importance of leaders in your music.
Well, we talk about, I guess you could say that in a sense. We talk about the importance of self-esteem, which sort of brings about a leadership in a small sense of the word. I think in our albums and our music, we more so talk about those leaders right there in the community. It's really not even on a worldwide or nationwide basis. I think we're talking about that leader that's in your own household, that mother who's decided to raise her children despite the fact that she doesn't have a father there with her, or a husband, or even a boyfriend, or a male figure. But Mama's Always on Stage, for instance, one of the songs that I wrote was talking about that teenage mother that, despite the unfortunate reality of not having a father figure there, she still decided that she's going to have to raise this child. And then what she also decided is that she's not going to raise it by herself. She's going to ask her community, and her community is responding to helping her to raise the child. There's an African proverb that I love every time I read it, and that is that it takes the entire community to raise a child. And actually the proverb says it takes a whole village to raise a child. And it says that no two parents raise a child. It's the village that raises a child. And when you think back in your own childhood, no matter where you're from, I'm sure that that's been the case. It's not just your mother and father. It's very likely your grandmother, your uncles, your aunts. All of them, if not directly raised you, they all gave you something that inspired you. And more than them, maybe your friends, and maybe your friends' friends. And it's just all these different people that came into your life that's given you something that you've taken with you on your journey to where you are right now. And that's what that proverb is talking about. I think it's a really powerful proverb.
じゃあまたちょっと変わりますけども、アフリカに帰りになんかね、こういうことをこれをもっと具体的にアフリカとは無の状態から何かを生み出すこれをもう少し具体的に教えてもらえないでしょうか。
In the song Africa Within Me, there's this line, Africa Within making something out of nothing.
Right.
And so that means you're finding something from Africa.
I think one of the beautiful things that I see about Africa is that African people have been able to create things that are so beautiful and that have affected the whole world out of the most bare situations and situations of poverty and of pain and what have you. They've still been able to create things that have helped the world in such beautiful ways. I mean, I look at hip-hop music, which I'm involved with in a big way, and I look at the origin of it and I say to myself, wow, these are kids who in the Bronx didn't have enough money to buy their own instruments and didn't have enough money to go to instrument schools or anything of that nature, but yet they were able to use whatever was at their house, which might have been a turntable and some old 45s or records, and start manipulating the record and scratching and making musical forms, which would then turn into even more, which was the art forms that came out of it, of painting and graffiti and then dancing. All of these things were ways to entertain, and it turned out to be a way of a multi-million-dollar industry. Not only that, but a music form that has actually raised a generation of black kids and white kids now. And so, and Japanese, as we're over here talking about hip-hop. So it's apparent that it's actually been such an influential music, and it came out of nothing. And
That's Africa.
right, and that's to me is just that power of Africa. You know, it's that inner power. It's not necessarily the continent or even the land. It's just that spiritual power of the people.
僕の中でちょっと考えたのは、ナスによりっていうところが東洋に考えると、逆に言うと、ナスに何もない時間じゃなくて、全ての生命があるっていう考え方がありますし、で僕なんかの考えるところも、ナスにいくら全部文化が生まれたかというのは、アフリカ文化っていうものが、その、逆に言うと、最も命が溢れているところに最も近い文化だというふうなメッセージが含まれているのかなと思ったんです。
From an Oriental perspective, he says the idea of nothingness means that's if you look at it in a paradoxical way, you see nothingness as where all things start, where all life starts. So that's why I guess why that particular line there, made sense to him.
I think it makes sense to me too, in that same way too, because to me, I think that when people have nothing, it almost forces them to rely on the spirit. And when you rely on the spirit, you actually have everything. And it's ironic.
Bob O.J., Mr. Wendell.
Mr. Wendell, yeah.
People have nothing, I guess.
Yeah.
Go back to the spiritual side.
I think so. And Bob O.J. too, as he said. See, one thing about Bob O.J. I've noticed is Bob O.J. is at an age in his life where, number one, he's not afraid to die. I think once those people pass that threshold, a whole new wisdom comes upon them. Those people that aren't afraid to be poor, that aren't afraid to die, and those people that aren't afraid to lose things are at a more higher spiritual advantage than those that are afraid. Martin Luther King, we can go on, Gandhi, on and on. The list goes on. I think those people are spiritually more powerful.
じゃあちょっと考えて ライブの話をしたいんですけども、あなたとずっとライブというのは祝祭がセレブレーションみたいに呼ばれてますので、祝祭、セレブレーションというそれは別に儀式みたいなものがあって、式の中で行われる行為が全て何かのシンボルであるというふうな、ことになってますけれども、あなたがこのライブをセレブレーションのあるというのは何を対象に言わせているか。
You guys talk about your live performance. It's a question about live performance. About the live performance as being a celebration. What exactly are you celebrating? What is it? Usually a celebration is a ritual, a symbol or something.
Exactly. What we celebrate changes almost every tour, sometimes every show. But generally, throughout all of our career, we've celebrated life, death, and the struggles of our ancestors. Those are the three things that we've chosen to celebrate no matter what show. There's other times that we'll celebrate black music. We'll do a tour celebrating black music. We might do a tour celebrating the work ethic, the ethics of work. We've done tours to celebrate that. We've done tours that celebrate fruit. And so each tour, we might change up what we're celebrating.
Tours celebrating fruit?
Yeah, we did, actually it was on Lollapalooza in the United States that we did a tour celebrating, it was actually the fruits of labor.
Oh, okay.
So fruit, not in an actual tangible sense, but the fruits of labor, meaning, the things that you get out of laboring. And so we celebrated that. And so we celebrate a number of different things per tour that we go on, And the reason why we really like it to be called a celebration, and we think of it as a celebration, is because it's not a performance in the sense where the crowd comes to watch us. We'd rather it be, and we let the people know at the beginning of our show what we're celebrating. We'd rather it be a more energetic experience where we all share energies together to celebrate this one thing. And so that's what we try to have our shows to be. Sometimes it turns out to be just a performance. And then other times it gets to the level of where we want it to be, and that's where the people are really all one with us, and we're all performing together to celebrate what we're asking, what the theme is for that night.
果物っていうだけじゃなくて、いろんなものの成果っていうのがね、成果ね。僕が見て面白かったのは、あなたたちからこう出てくるよくアフリカの上に木のカゴをこう乗っけて、よく果物とか配るじゃないですか。あそこにね、DJ の方がレコードを入れてたんですよ。あれがすごい印象的だったんです。だからこの光とかで。いや、今回。じゃあいわゆるそこで使われる音楽みたいなものもその成果であるっていうふうに言ってある。
So I guess this time around, members of the band were wearing like some type of baskets on their heads. They had like records in it.
Yeah.
So you're saying like music or records or the fruit of
celebrating records. It was celebrating vinyl. Really, we are, because vinyl right now is so the theme for our show right now is support the music of Arrested Development. So if you come see our show tonight, you seen it? Did you see it? Oh yeah. Well, support the music of Arrested Development, and so it has vinyl inside this basket that we put on. It's basically talk about just supporting our music.
Well, why would that come up? Why would that particular theme come up now? Why do we support the music of Arrested Development now?
Actually, I don't know why. Right now, really had no significance for right now. We actually put out a single before our album came out. We put out a single, sold about 200 copies. We put it out independently in Georgia called Support the Music of Arrested Development. And so it's just an ongoing thing.
もう一回それに繰り返していくんですけども、例えば馬場大手の朗読をしたりとか、普通の入ったこうみたいなものを後ろでそれと関係なくこういうふうにこう踊りを踊ったりとかするような行為をやってるんですけども、それもセレブレーションの一環であると。彼はじゃあそのセレブレーションの中にのような存在というふうに考えてその中での王さんみたいな。
In these celebrations, does Baba or Jay sort of preside over? Is he the priest presiding over the celebration?
I think more so he's the elder he's watching and participating in it. He's really not presiding over it. He's sort of just participating in it. I think Arrested Development, I don't really think anyone's presiding over it. It's more so we're the host. And that's really it. You know, everyone is sort of in it together, you know, from that point on. So it's like we're the host of it, and we move on from there.
彼らとまあサウンドなんだダンスで入り込んだりとか結構それであなたがいろいろこう口を挟んだりとか本当はこうした方がいいみたいないわゆる音楽宣言で何らかのことを言ったりするんでしょうか
Is that a complete divorce from the musical creation process, though? Does that have a say in what the actual music happens?
He does, and not a lot, because he's not a musician. Very rarely, but he'll sometimes speak his mind. Yo, man, this part needs to go longer, or this part, man, feels good. You know, it's more just very simplistic. Like, yo, you're like, yo, this part feels good, man. We need to do this twice. And it's okay. So it's never really analytical musician type talk. It's just, yo, I like this part. Let's do this twice. You know.
彼がなんか古い例えばフランスの黒人を知ってたりとかしてなんかインスピレーションを与えるみたいなこともないんですよ彼自身に力を持ってそうですねもっと古いなんてフランスのみたいなことを知っていてそれをインスピレーションにして与えることがない
Is he very familiar with more older music, traditional music, and does he inspire you? Does he pass on that knowledge at all, like his knowledge of older music?
I think sort of subconsciously maybe. You know, there was a point in one of our celebrations where we were doing a show and he just, without any any knowledge of all of us, he just started to do a song in the middle of our show, some song back in the 50s. And
How did you do that? What did you do?
he just grabbed the mic and just started doing it. No instruments, just singing it. And I mean, he was amazed, so we put it in the show for the next 3 nights. But there's some times that he'll sing songs, you know, from eras that we were never born in and we had no idea about. And he listens, he meditates. So there's certain times when he's meditating that he'll listen to traditional musics that I've never heard before. But other than that, I don't think that he's inspired us to do any of those types of musics. I think, if anything, musically, we've inspired him. I think we've inspired him, first of all, to understand more about hip-hop music. And then second of all, to enjoy it. And then third of all, he has a bigger knowledge base on just music that's out and music that's been out than he's ever had, I believe. I think we've definitely enhanced that. あなたの楽器で他の場合だと違うなとかこれだけはダメだとかそういうものがあるかもしれない
What do you think about your own rapping decisively, definitively differently than rapping? What separates you?
I think, and I know this is a very simple answer, but I think the fact that I'm me separates me from others, and that's the answer.
I mean, are you able to express more of yourself, is that what you're saying, or just the fact that you're you?
I think when I found who I am as a person, the way that I the way that was natural for me to express myself started to come out in Arrested Development. I had been in other groups before Arrested Development. None of them were signed. And I rapped then, and I felt like I sounded more like other people. And then when I started to learn more about who I am, I started to sound totally unique to other people. And I think that's the key to any other hip-hop artist, or any artist for that matter, is that once he or she starts to find who they are, I'm almost sure that they'll have a totally unique style of delivering and lyrical style and what they'll say if they really say what's really in them, if they know what's in them, you know. And that's what trips me out when I first found out who I was and when I started to express myself the way I would want to express myself. It just started to come out.
bird imitation.
All right.
Apparently, you have said before that one of the objectives or purposes of Arrested Development is to cleanse. Do you remember ever having said this? Cleansing. Okay? And you said that's a very positive thing, but even though the musician or the performer's intention may be positive, the music could possibly have negative influence in the wrong direction. Can you do anything to prevent that? Can you do anything to keep the music? Can you make sure the music is actually
I really don't think I can, or we can, because me and my road manager actually was just talking about that. We was talking about how anything can have positive and negative effects on anybody. And so I think that's just sort of a law of nature, that there's always going to be that negative and positive side. And so in our music, the main things that we try to cleanse is ourselves. And we hope that as the music reaches all these different people, that in cleansing ourselves it might help someone else. But that's what, a lot of times the songs are therapeutic for ourselves, more so than trying to be therapeutic for everyone. And I think that's usually the best way to reach everyone else, is try to reach yourself.
So as long as the music is positively influencing you, it's probably going to positively.
That's what we hope. We hope that it's going to positively influence other people too. And but we're almost sure that there's some people that it may not.
Getting back to what we were talking about in the beginning about how the elders, what the elders should pass on to younger people is wisdom, and that's what you will be passing on as well. When you talk about wisdom, like what exactly are you referring to?
I think wisdom is this very, for me, this is how I interpret wisdom, is this very calm ability of knowing something, as opposed to just believing and thinking and this, that, and the other. Being through something, you've lived through it, and you just have a very calming effect on people. It's like, and that's the difference between, I think, wisdom. I think wisdom is a lot more calm than like a youth that thinks that he or she knows everything, including myself. Wisdom is like, I've been through this already, and I think I know where this is going to go.
So wisdom through experience.
Wisdom through experience. Knowledge through experience. Yeah.
There's no substitute for experience.
I don't think so.
じゃああなたが持ってきている尊厳みたいなものを言葉にするどういう無条件の尊厳スライドでGetting down to the last couple of questions. Got the 2-minute warning. Yeah. あなたが誇りみたいなものは何ですか? I'm sure you're proud. You have your pride and self-esteem. When you talk about self-esteem, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of who I am. I think that's what I'm the most proud of, is who I am and
your identity.
My identity. Yes. And
what is that?
I think it's a number of different things. But it's what you know. Who you are is something that not everyone knows yet. So it's something that you have to sort of dig deep into yourself and really find out who you are. When you find that out, and then to say that you're proud, that's a big statement. Some people may dig deep and find out who they are and not be so proud. me, I'm very happy that I'm proud of who I am. And it's not always that I speak and do the actions that the real me would want me to do. In other words, every move that you make and you make, in my opinion, and that I make, in my opinion, aren't always moves that the real you would make. There's many other things that influence our moves, and so to be proud of yourself is a major thing, because that means that the moves that you really feel that the inner you wanted you to make, you're proud of those moves. It's a great thing.
So do you think you're a realist or an idealist?
I think I'm a little bit of both. I think I'm very much an idealist, and then there's times when I'm a realist. I don't think I'm ever both at the same time. It's like certain times I'm very much an idealist, and then there's other times I'm a realist.
How about an optimist or a pessimist?
I think there's times I'm both. I think there's times that I'm very optimistic, then there's other times that I'm very pessimistic. It's like I said in the song Tennessee, I said problems got me pessimistic. I said brothers and sisters keep messing up. And then there's other times when I'm very optimistic about things, like Mama's always on stage, talking about how the community's going to help this woman get through this trial of raising a child by herself, and we're going to help her out. And we respect you all the way. That's one of the lyrics of the song. So I think that it's a little bit of both.
あなたに強い意志があるように見えるけれども、それが理想的な中で混乱してしまうことはないんでしょうか。しっかりしているだけでもそれだけでコンフューズしてしまうから。
Do you find yourself confused a lot though, like the realist and the idealist getting crossed, or the pessimist and the optimist?
Constantly.
Yeah. How do you alleviate the confusion?
I think I stay thirsty, and that's basically staying thirsty for truth. And I say constantly. Basically, as I look back at my life, I've constantly been confused as to what's going on. And I think that's sort of normal for me, at least, because it keeps me on a constant search to find that balance. And there's times when I've had balance, there's times when I have balance, and there's times when I don't. And I think that I've almost accepted that to be a part of my life. I think that's going to be something that I'll go through for the rest of my life. At the same time, I cherish those moments when I do have balance. I say that on some songs that I'm writing now. And it's really a special time when you do have that balance. You just cherish it, and it's almost like an orgasm. When you have that orgasm, it's the bomb. It's like, this is great, right? So every time you try to have sex from that point on, it's like looking for that orgasm. It's the same way as like looking for that balance. The rest of your life you're spent getting that balance, and you do get it. A lot of times throughout your life you'll get it, but you'll never stay there. I think that's part of being human.
どうもありがとうございます。
Welcome.